All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is July 10th. It's just after 1300. I'm John Backadall. I'm your new game host for this event. This is the Hazard Mitigation Working Group. And courtesy of Dave Fogerson, I've been asked to be the chair of this group as the deputy of our organization. And that's what we're going to seat moving forward, is try to keep a deputy in this role and then have someone like Andrew as our vice chair, and then keep a well-rounded committee as we move forward. So for this particular item, can we open up and call out order agenda item number 1, please? Call to order. Roll call.
Roll call. John Backdahl.
Here.
Andrew Trelease. Andrew.
Sorry, I'm here.
Stephen Ockroft.
Acroft.
Here.
Eric Antle.
Present. Good afternoon.
Solomon Barton.
Present. Hello, thank you.
Faith Beekman. Faith.
This is Melissa. Faith will be joining us. She's just running a little behind.
Kathy Canfield.
I'm here, thank you.
Sherry Davis.
I'm here.
Craig DiPolo. No Craig DiPolo?
No.
He's there.
Present, sorry.
Sierra Sampson.
Present.
Aaron Warner. I see you.
Sorry, was that Aaron Warnock?
Yes.
Present. Thank you.
Here.
Okay, we need 6 for a quorum, and we have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you for that. Hey, Melissa, if you know when Faith pops on, if she could just interrupt and let us know when she's present for the roster capability here. We have quorum, not a big deal. Just want her to be accounted for. We'll close agenda item number 1, move on to number 2, public comment. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until a matter itself has been specifically included on the agenda as an item in which action may be taken. Public comments may last up to 3 minutes at the discretion of the chair. Comments will not be restricted based on viewpoint. We have a little bit of lag time here between the YouTube channel and our Zoom meeting. So anybody that wants to call in, they can call in at 669-219-2599. When prompted, enter the meeting ID 686-738-8625 and then press pound. We'll go ahead and wait about 30 seconds so that everybody has an opportunity to say anything they would like online. Do we have any public comment in the room? Seeing and hearing none. Any of the members out in Zoom land have any public comment? Seeing none. Do we have anybody call in, write in?
We did not.
All right, we have no public comment. We'll close agenda item number 2. Move on to agenda item number 3, and this is the appointment of the chair of the Nevada Hazard Mitigation Working Group. Vice Chair Andrew Trelease and new chair John Backadall, Division of Emergency Management. Deputy Administrator was appointed by Dave Fogerson. That would be me. And then we also had you guys vote in Andrew at the last quarterly meeting, I believe it was. So want to appreciate everyone attending this working group. This is a very important group, and we have a lot of money that comes through post-disaster for mitigation work. And we want to make sure the work you've done and the work you're going to do in the future continues to grow. And so with that, Dave Fogerson, our chief, was looking at having the deputy administrator of our agency on here as the chair of one of our committees, commissions, and working groups that we do coordinate and facilitate. And then Andrew, anything you want to add, sir, as the vice chair?
No, I look forward to working with everyone and a lot of success as we've had in the past. I hope we continue to do that and get some good mitigation plans together and be great for the state. So looking forward to everyone, and thank you in advance.
Excellent, appreciate that. And in lieu of the chair not being here at any time, the vice chair can run the meetings. So we'll work together to make sure that that happens. And then we always have Janelle as our ground here to make sure that we're always in place. So we'll close agenda item number 3, and we'll move on to agenda item number 4. This is approval of the minutes. So discussion, possible action The working group will discuss and review the minutes from the April 5th, 2023 meeting. And do we have anyone that has not reviewed the meeting minutes to where we have any comments, concerns, or changes that need to be made before we ask for a vote? All right, hearing none, can I get a motion on the minutes to approve as presented?
Andrew Trelease, I'll make that motion.
Andrew's got the motion. Do we have a second?
Salome
Sarah
Barton,
Sampson,
second.
I second.
All right, I got Salome Barton as the second. Any further comments on the minutes as presented? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed on the minutes? All right, motion carries unanimously. We'll close agenda item number 4, move on to number 5. This is Wise Oak Consulting LLC. This will be a presentation on the updating of the state hazard mitigation plan. So we have Randy Brawley from Wise Oak Consulting and Janelle here from DEM, Hazard Mitigation Officer. They'll present us the updated sections of this plan, have some open discussion here with the working group and see where we're at this point. So Randy, I'll turn it over to you first, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Now, are you going to be running the screen there, or you want me to share my screen for the presentation?
Screen, Randy.
I'm sorry, say again?
Serene, the boss, says, please share your screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
You betcha. Okay, I assume everyone's looking at this presentation. I'll go ahead and run it off. I'll do a power. I guess I can run. Now I'll run it. This is the one you've got, so I'll stick with that in case I make changes. I assume you're seeing slide number 1, the cover slide.
We are. We see exactly what you sent us.
I got to tell you, folks, it's been quite a year. It's been fun. Janelle and I have been pedaling like crazy, working on this thing. Having done your thyra and whatnot and some other things, now it has a mitigation plan. I think I know Nevada better than I've known any place I've lived on earth. So this is always a pleasure working with y'all. All right. So as y'all know, we've got a 5-year update. This I'll kind of go through these kind of slowly because it is a little bit of an eye chart. So we have a 5-year plan, a major update of your Nevada Enhanced Hazard Mitigation Plan. All right. As an update, much of the general outline has been retained. So we haven't shuffled too many things. If it was a full revision, we might change some things now because sometimes just because FEMA has kind of changed some of its guidance as well. We have gone through and reviewed and or updated every page, all 1,200 and some odd pages in this thing. So everything's been taken a look at. We haven't glossed over anything at all. We had subject matter experts update each of their hazard profiles. So thanks for those out there who worked on that. Now we have other, let's see. They did. Oh yeah. And the state is working up all of its relevant information, changes to your working group and reporting and things like minutes and projects that have been completed, all to comply with the requirements for the enhanced plan. All right. Major changes. We worked a lot on climate change. The subject matter experts started with it within their sections, and we provided more analysis. And since 2018, FEMA has a whole new set of tools and whatnot, GIS-based models that we've included into our mapping that you'll take a look at. Integration with the thyra. So as we've been going forward, we're bringing those more in line, comparing the threats and hazards in the thyra versus the ones in the hazard mitigation plan. So ideally, as the state moves forward, all of your plans will have a nice common base set of threats and hazards. All right. We've also integrated more with the state of Nevada threats and hazards guide. So that with that, you'll have various your own particular definitions and titles for different hazards. So we've moved to make sure that all of the hazards in the hazard mitigation plan align with that threat and hazards guide. And as we move forward in the thyra, it'll be the same. So all these, again, will be aligned with using the same words. We have increased the whole community information via extensive national risk index maps, and we're going to see what that looks like in a minute. We've done completely new hazardous runs on the major rivers. We've done new hazardous runs on Mount Rose, Frenchman Fault, and Mount Ruby USGS scenarios. Section 3, the prioritization has been updated based on online poll results. So thank you very much for those who participate in that. Section 4 was also updated, and your action items were prioritized again according to the poll that you did. So thank you for those who participated in that. With more detail in hazards analysis, Section 3, we dropped the climatology appendix. So the subject matter experts put all that information up front, so it seemed redundant. So we don't carry that annex anymore, that appendix. Okay, the impact of climate change. This was a fun one. I thought it was fun anyhow. Oops, that's probably too big of a zoom. Basically, what I wanted to make sure we did, that was one comment that FEMA had, was there's not enough analysis with respect to climate change. The last one, in particular, they want quantitative analysis, which we'll talked about that in just a minute. But there was no way we were going to do a deep dive on every single one of our hazards with respect to climate change. And in particular, there's not even that much data. So we did focus on the 5 major disasters or areas that you have in the state of Nevada climate strategy. So that's basically drought, floods, heat and heat waves, loss of snow, and wildfire. And as we'll see, we actually had some things bump up to higher priority, as y'all can imagine, over the past several years. Heat and heat waves and drought have become even more significant than the past. So we've made sure that on each one of those, we have some quantitative analysis in Section 3. Let's see. Yeah, the feedback from the 2018 plan dictated more of that. Got it. Here's what was a real challenge with that. For those of you who kind of messed around in this climate change stuff, general climate trends are kind of well understood, right? And they'll say, well, it's going to be hotter, it's going to be drier, we're going to get less snow in the winter. But then the question is, that FEMA asked us, but what's the quantitative impact of that? Not just the general. And so I got to tell you, that's a challenge, because there's not much out there actually in the world that will define, what is this exact impact? They'll give general trends. So we have a combination of data from White House reports to industry reports on golfing and skiing and all the things to extrapolate and get information and estimate, if we have an X% reduction of tourist or activity or whatever due to this, we might have some. It was kind of fun, but it was pretty interesting. It's kind of a tough slog. And talking to FEMA, by the way, they don't really have a national database for this. I go, so what's everybody using? There really isn't. So it's a wide open field for any young people in college. Yes.
Do we use the value for death on any of this?
The value for death. I believe so. I will have let me look in that. I seem to remember going through that on one or more. Because in particular, I believe that FEMA's work with their National Risk Index also addresses that in that methodology. So let me find where that is. Is there anything specific other than whether or not we used it?
So this is John Backetall for the record. No, Randy, it was just a comment in the fact that ultimately, with all of those things that were listed, there's death to the environment, there's death to the wildlife, and death to us as human beings. And so, like you said, their risk analysis usually has some sort of final endpoint being death as the worst case scenario. So I just leaned over to Janelle to ask that on inclusive in that, to make sure that our end risk is there's going to be death across the board.
Yes, and I'll follow up on that and look back at what we did. As I remember, in particular, like heat, extreme heat in the cities, you have more fatalities and things like that, both in numbers, and then there's also the cost value as well in those calculations. So I'll get back with you on that and give you a little idea of where that shows up. Okay, next slide. Integration with the state FIRA. And on the right is just as I go through it, that's just, we hold 3 different workshops, Northern Nevada, Eastern Nevada, and Southern Nevada. And in each of those columns, you can see that those are the threats and hazards that they identified as the worst, most likely. So in the north, Mount Rose earthquake, flood, pandemic, festival, severe weather. So it'd be a bunch of people out in the desert, and suddenly we have a big event that traps everybody. Wildfire. We got hazmat release in a rail tanker accident. Looked at active shooter and cyber attacks, a little bit of both. One was a SCADA attack. So if someone wants to just take down the power grid or whatever grid, and then also similar effect, different methodology, ransomware attack on pipelines, as we saw out here where I live in North Carolina, the Colonial Pipeline. So, you know, there are cyber attacks. Eastern, the drought, earthquake, flood, pandemic, severe weather, winds, thunderstorms, hail, severe weather, snowstorms, and wildfire. They also went with hazmat, rail, and tanker accident. We looked at a Carlton tunnel hazmat accident, mining accidents, and then human-caused, active shooter, and cyber attack. And in Southern Nevada, the big ones we looked at in that THIRA were drought, Frenchman Fall earthquake, flood, pandemic, wildfire, hazmat release, a utility interruption, something like an extreme heat type of event, mass casualty attack, cyber attack, a tunnel poisoning attack, and a pipeline attack. So those were the kind of the things that popped up in each of those sections.
Randy, why wasn't extreme heat put as a hazard in Southern Nevada? I mean, I see it there in utility interruption, but as we kind of mentioned, that extreme heat in Southern Nevada is a big concern for just homelessness and people that don't have, you know, adequate places to get out of the extreme heat in the summertime, especially. So we do have deaths related to that. Was that considered, or is that?
At some point, basically, the methodology, what we usually do is we started years ago with actually the hazard mitigation plan, and let people vote on what are the big ones that they want to look at. In addition, the THIRA's a little funny. The big thing to understand is female on that is asking for your worst, most likely, not all. And they want to look for the things that will drive core capabilities. So chances are when they look at a catastrophic Frenchman Fault earthquake, those and we actually do that actually during extreme heat. My scenarios are always in extreme heat as well, by the way. Like utility interruption happens in the heat of summer. So the extreme heat is incorporated in them, but not as an end in itself, because something like Frenchman's Fault drives such a gigantic, sheltering problem in the heat or whatever that becomes the primary driver, but it's catastrophic. But I will say, yes, on mine, like Frenchman Fault, I know utility interruption, cyber attack, usually I put those in extreme heat so that they have to deal with it. Or if it's in a cold environment, it might be during the cold of winter, something like that. So,
Randy, this is John Backall for the record for Andrew's question there. We're planning right now for the fall workshops where we do the THIRA assessment every year, and we will help Southern Nevada pay attention to that. They've always accounted for it. They've just felt they've never activated for it, that they would have to activate the county operations center to a full activation to deal with it, that they have the capability with all the resources they have. So they tended to focus on the 5 things they felt would be a dramatic impact in those natural hazards. But we could definitely, with it being 118, potential in the next few days, bring light to that and add that to the Southern Nevada impacts, because it's not getting cooler.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Good. All right, so integration with the THIRA, as I said, as we work forward, and it gets a little sticky, as we'll see, because you can see there's some sensitive things that we're not going to throw out there when we start talking about, cyber attacks and tunnel poisoning gas attacks. Tell me more about that. So we're not going to add a lot of information about those things. These are high-level concerns. But across the different planning elements that the state does, as we bring these together, whether it's a continuity plan, a hazard mitigation plan, emergency plans, fires, the whole bit, ideally we'll start aligning. So we're talking as we go across plans, we're not reinventing things, and people know what we're talking about. All right. Let's see here. Section 3. This year I did add a THIRA a kind of a crosswalk, THIRA hazard mitigation plan crosswalk. So what we're discussing, and we're going to see that I think the next slide, so we can see what's included in the THIRA versus what's included in hazard mitigation plan. All right. In the past, we included the THIRA executive summary as an appendix. Again, due to increased sensitivities, we have removed that, and we simply tell them to contact DEM. You know, if someone really has a need to know, they can talk to DEM and to get that information. And so kind of hard to see on the left, but the integration with the state THIRA, we have our, you know, various hazard profiles, avalanche, drought, earthquake, and then whether high, lower, medium that we're carrying this year. And then over on the right, we can see, like, for example, drought. Eastern Nevada and Southern Nevada carried that as a high threat for them. All 3 jurisdictions looked at earthquake. All 3 were floods. You can see things like extreme heat, as you noted, wasn't necessarily carried as a disaster in of itself. And then we see straight line winds. Eastern Nevada carried that. Thunderstorms and lightning. Eastern Nevada carried that. So at this point, it's probably kind of a gee whiz in the hazard mitigation plan. But I think, again, going forward, as we try to align all these things together to keep that crosswalk going, keeps it interesting. And to your point, might stimulate us this time around going, yeah, why isn't that carried in the THIRA? You know, even if it's not the worst case, it's worth designing a scenario, a planning scenario for in the THIRA. So that's a good question. All right. Already talked about this crosswalk stuff. I don't think there's any other notes here. Okay, integration with the state threats and hazards guide. So we again, like I said, we renamed all the hazards because there was a little bit of you know, discrepancy. So we've renamed the hazards and the hazard mitigation plan to match the guide. We also reorganized section 3 according to that guide. So based on those name and naming convention, we went alphabetical order. So that got reorganized simply for that. We also did, in kind of that THIRA alignment, we broke out technological hazards in their own chapter 3 subsection. So chapter 3 will go natural hazards, technological hazards, things like power failures, dam failures, and then finally human caused threats were mentioned. We address them, but we say, you know, we're not putting anything in the hazard mitigation plan for that. That's in the time. So section 3 is a major rework. Okay. We increased whole community assessments. I don't know if how many people have crawled through these, the National Risk Index, the FEMA's new guides. There's all kinds of models. And this is where I was thinking when I'm thinking cost of death and fatalities and things like that. So there's all these, a lot of models for all the hazards, but also social vulnerability index. So we've got maps in. There's, first of all, looking at social vulnerability index, we've got a series of these charts right up front down at the census level, the census tract level. Just as a kind of a nice, I guess, playing tool overview. People can look in their communities. This one is what the overall social vulnerability index. We have them. There's different ones for people with disabilities, economically challenged, languages. And if you want to, I can, when I finish the presentation, we could briefly also share some of that and take a look at that. So that's been included. And then in every section with these hazards, there's 6 new maps that include these social vulnerability index, or this national risk index maps from FEMA. So what you'll see is these charts that'll be things like historic loss values, the frequency, future expected frequency, the future expected losses. So we've got a series of additional charts like this in every single one of our hazards for which there was data to show that kind of stuff. And like I said, ideally, it'd be a nice tool for those who might want to look in the hazard mitigation plan and go, where is it dark? You know, where I need to focus. As I mentioned, We redid all the, did new hazardous runs on the major rivers, Carson River Basin, Colorado River, Humboldt, Muddy, Truckee, Virgin, and Walker Rivers. And earthquakes. So several years ago, the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology, did I get that right? They did this extensive risk assessment about a decade ago regarding, went to every county and ran all kinds of models. That was beyond our scope and time for the time that we had for this. But what we did do is the USGS has shake maps scenarios for Mount Rose, Frenchman Fault, Ruby Mountain. So we did run the hazardous runs on those and got new losses and new numbers and things like that for that. So we do have those. Okay, hazard survey. We did a web-based survey, shared it with
Randy?
partners. Yes.
It's Janelle. I had a quick question on the hazardous runs, and maybe you or Craig DiPolo even can comment on this, but we were looking at a table that Sola Mae Barton had pointed out to us, and some of the counties, the counties have the cities listed under them, giving the scenario and that, and North Las Vegas is not listed under Clark County, and I wondered if there's a reason why like City of North Las Vegas would be left out, but Moapa's in there and some other ones that maybe are a little smaller. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Do you recall if it was a flood or earthquake?
Let me look just real quick.
No, it wouldn't have been flood because Colorado River down there doesn't reach into Las Vegas.
So this was out of section 3 and it was table 3-57.
Earthquakes.
It is under
Under earthquakes.
an economic loss.
So there's two where North Las Vegas was not listed, but this one is the probability of occurrence of earthquakes. And then the other one that she had mentioned was the cost, the economic loss.
Hey, real quick, John Backetall for the record. For everybody that interjects and says something, please make sure you introduce yourself so that whoever's taking care of these minutes can capture who made that comment. So currently Janelle's speaking, but we did have Salome inject and say that it was for economic loss. I want to make sure all the information is captured. So please speak up and say who you are prior to going forth with comment, please. Thank you.
Okay, 3-57. You're looking at the table now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I hate to do this one, but now I'm gonna have to defer to Bureau of Mines and Geology. This was that detailed study that we did not update on the probabilities. They went all the way through every county with the major city. So I'll have to pose that to them as why there's no North Las Vegas, because I guess even 10 years ago, you'd expect it might be there, huh?
Yeah, I'm not sure why myself. I'm madly trying to find the report. Oh, there you go. I'm at a loss on why North Las Vegas isn't in there, unless it was generally included with Las Vegas, but I'm not. I don't quite remember the logic that would have gone with that.
That
it
report is.
Oh, good.
That was Dr. Craig DiPolo for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
What I can do is, that report is still, and I'm guessing in geological time, probabilities, it probably hasn't changed much in a decade. I will look in that as well. It could be that, because again, this is a table I did not update. It could be that from 2018, it was just a line that was just mistakenly left off or something. So let me go back and into that and find that, and I'll follow up and see if I can see if because if that data is in that I think it was like a 2014 earthquake study, then I'll bring that into this.
Thank you. This is Salome Bart for the record. Randy, yes, in the previous report, it was not included as well, and we believe that was probably the case. And but we're comparable to Henderson, literally between Henderson and Boulder. So,
right.
But we have two fault lines that actually run under our city. So really, it would be remiss to leave us out when, if anything does happen earthquake-wise, we would have extensive damage and economic loss with that. But I would gladly assist in any way to get any information that is needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I'll definitely look at that. And that was something I was telling Janelle, I'm like, oh my gosh, I already see hazard mitigation projects to begin, as soon as you get started is, refreshing, some things like that. And then you said, was it 3-58 as well, table? Same thing, the values. One thing I did do is we did update the values. I do believe I'll have to look at my note values, but I see that it's missing. So I'll look that up, and I will get back with you. And again, if it's in that 2014 study, then I'll put it in here. And if it's not, I'll say, I don't know. And Dr. DePaulo and I can maybe talk and see what we might be able to do.
Yeah, I think this is Craig DePolo again. I think the HAZUS run could probably be done pretty easily for North Las Vegas. But the probabilities, the USGS programs we used to use for that don't exist anymore, unfortunately. So we probably can't come up with new probabilities easily. They are going to be on the higher side. So if you had to guess, it would be more like Boulder City or Henderson versus Las Vegas. I apologize for that. I never noticed that.
Boulder City. Okay. Cool. Yes. And you're right. We can hook up with that because and the time it is, I mean, if as long as we have the data, it doesn't take but a couple hours to run an earthquake fault. But yeah, getting all that comparisons. But I'll work with the good doctor, and we'll see what we can work out. Thanks for bringing that up. I love when people are obviously reading this stuff, so it's good. Where was I here? Here we go. Okay, go back to this. Okay, section 3, what I say, web-based, web-based survey. We did want to update the what we thought the priorities were for the hazards. We ran that. For those who've been to my thyroid workshops, do like to kind of capture some of the demographics. We see lots of firefighters, some hunting, government workers, residents, construction, education, fishing, state government, healthcare and social services, parks and rec, retail, trade, volunteer organizations. So a decent spread. It would have been nicer to have more respondents, but I'm glad that we got at least a fairly varied background and not just, they were all emergency managers that took it, and that was the end of the experience. I always ask about people, whether they work with people with access and functional needs, and if they care to identify. In this case, it's a good number. 2/3 of the respondents to the survey work with people with access and functional needs, so we know they're thinking about that type of thing. And it's like 22% of the respondents identified as having an access and functional need. Okay, now this is all up. The way I weighted this is all up for change, if you like. I'm a weighted average kind of guy. Basically, just meaning like all the different weights will add up to 100% down here, because I like to think that some things are more important than others. If you're okay with these weights, we can run with them. If you don't like them, I could make them all even. I could change them, whatever. So basically, on the various factors that we asked people to respond to, whether it was probability or magnitude or whatever, 1 was always the lowest and the score of 5 was the highest. And so I weighted the score of 1 at 10%. You can see 2, 15, 3, 20, 4, 25, and score of 5 is 30%. So if it was at the large end, whether it was probability or magnitude or whatever, you can see that it's going to get 3 times the weight of 1 that's at the low end. Right? So when these scores calculate, this is basically how it works down here. Basically 10% for every, for the 1, a 2 gets 15%, a 3 gets 20%, a 4 gets 25%, a 5 gets 30%. We multiply it together and we get a score that we can compare. So while you're chewing on that going, what did he just do to me? This is, and now when we see what those various factors are, probability / frequency went 1 to 5, magnitude and severity 1 to 5, warning time 1 to 5, duration, got an overall total, and then a rank. And then here for our I'm going to zoom this up a little bit. For our extreme heat fans, I want to say extreme heat in the last hazard mitigation plan might have been a medium. And it's gone up to basically the number 2 concern here: wildfire, extreme heat, floods, drought, earthquake, winter storms. And when I look at the scores, wildfire at 98 is far and away the highest concern people had. And then we kind of see a grouping: extreme heat, floods, drought, earthquake, down to about winter storm, right? So those are kind of a nice natural grouping: extreme heat, floods, drought, earthquake, winter storm. Another little grouping: thunderstorms and lightning and infectious diseases, which is also, I think, important, influenced by climate change. Then we get some straight line winds, landslides, and then we got avalanche, volcano, tornado, infestation, fissures and subsidence, I assume, expansive soils, and seiche. And I dropped which is kind of a little lake tsunami. So that's how it shook out. Anybody, any surprises for anybody? And they think, ooh, something ought to be higher. Here's what I was surprised with. And I will tell you, this is where I violated my own rules. Infectious diseases were down here below thunderstorm and lightning. And so we're going to go in priorities. We'll get to that earlier. I feel strongly about carrying infectious diseases as a high priority, even though as we break these out, it would more likely fall into a medium priority. And so I'll pause there and ask people what their thoughts. I'm just thinking, boy, we're just still emerging from COVID-19, and I kind of think infectious disease ought to be high. But I'll defer to y'all if anyone wants to make any comments or have any thoughts about that. Okay.
This is Andrew Trelease for the record. I kind of agree with you there. I think thunderstorm and lightning, I think what in a thunderstorm, the bigger concern is flooding. And so, just I know they're parsed out here, but that was a little surprising that thunderstorm and lightning was so high. And I would even say straight line winds was a little surprising for being that low. I think it's something that we deal with a lot in Southern Nevada that also people don't think about a lot. And maybe that should be brought up in the next meeting along with extreme heat. Because I know for sure some of the centers have been opened for damage due to straight line winds in Southern Nevada. Just because of that. And sometimes it's related to a storm, but it's really the winds that cause most of the damage. So I'm surprised by those. I would think certainly above thunderstorms and lightning for both of those things.
Yeah, and in the north, you've got whatever those winds are that sweep out onto the north and really hammer the kind of eastern half of the state too as well. Yeah. Back in the day, I was in Las Vegas for a straight line wind. Took down, was it the flamingo sign back in the day? Maybe 20 years ago. Am I dating myself? So I took note of that. Straight line winds and infectious disease worth talking about. And again, as we start looking ahead to the thyroids, we're bringing those things up again. I don't know if there's any surprise here or not. Folks saw hazmat as the #1 technological hazard that we have in the hazard mitigation plan. Then down a little bit further, group flash floods and dam failure. In our plan, flash floods are a lot. Typically, your washes, your ditches, your canals, that type of thing. Human caused, again, we included it in there, but that's as far as it goes. We didn't analyze it. People worry about terrorism / WMD, cyber attack, and active assailant. Interesting.
Andrew Trelease for the record again, Randy. What was the reason for technological for flash floods?
The flash floods in the hazard mitigation plan is that hazard is it's ditches and canals and things like that. So it's
Failures
because
of a structure.
no, that'd be dam failure. Well, let's look. Where's my hazard mitigation plan again? Oh, here we go. Let me go flash flood, ditches and things. And you're asking why it's in technological as opposed to
Why?
as opposed to a natural.
Correct.
Versus the other flooding that we have, the riverine flooding is what we carry in. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, this would be a better way to do it. I don't want appendix. I don't want appendix. Three. Where's my ditches? Here we go. I'm gonna make you dizzy. So up here at the top of up here in flood and natural hazards is your basic riverine type flooding, storms. It's still storms and things like that. Versus flooding along irrigation. That's the long title. Flooding along irrigation ditches and canals. So it's in that simply because it's human related. I've got these human related things, irrigation ditches that are flooding versus a river.
Yeah, this is Andrew Trelease again, but that's not flash flooding. I mean, that's a canal that's water all the time and then failing, and I think that said flash flooding in the slide.
Let me I'll tell you. Let me I'll press on with this, and if in the end I will pull up the survey itself so we can refresh on exactly what that said and why it shows up there.
Thank you.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do that. Where's my presentation? Here we go. And we'll get back to that. It's usually a matter of the wording of the question. We'll make sure we're straight on that. Okay, human caused. So the new hazard prioritization, again, this is one. So high, wildfire, extreme heat, floods, and so I think if I remember right, extreme. What did I say here? I mean, extreme heat and drought risk moved up to high this year. So clearly, people are concerned about that, and that's why I say all the respondents kind of put pandemic and medium risks. We retained it as a high. Just because we're so close to that.
Hi, this is Kathy Canfield. Can I ask a question too with the ratings here? So I think a lot of it, I mean, when you showed like who you got the respondents from, is anybody shocked that all the fire personnel said wildfire is the biggest threat? And so it kind of depends. I mean, if we'd gone to a hospital and asked them what the highest risk categories were, they'd probably say infectious diseases. So I think it's up to, like, you're thinking like this group needs to analyze who was answering the questions and how did some of these that seem like they probably do need to have the higher risk rather than like the medium risk thing. The other problem I think with infectious diseases is it got so political that you've got one group of people that were very much against doing anything or didn't believe it versus others that were very extreme, and this is a problem. So, that's going to be a hard thing to come over. Anyway, just my opinion with how we're ranking some of these.
Hey, Randy, John Backetall for the record. That's a great comment because you're absolutely right. The people who attend the meetings tend to be those that are the most vocal and get the most input. We do have the local health authorities and the health jurisdictions that are present at the THYRA events. We have the hospitals there from the local communities so that they can be giving their point of view as well. But in the emergency management world where this is coming from, with so many of our emergency managers either within a fire organization or former fire, and now they're the emergency manager of a jurisdiction, they do weigh this heavily. And then it also gets some merit by the amount of cost that the state and the federal government is throwing at the wildlands. And during COVID, almost all of our THYRA stuff came back all about infectious disease, especially those first 2 years. And then after that, it started to normalize back to be a little more to where Nevada tends to roll. So you're spot on with your assessment of who reports, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And if there's the ranking, I think that Randy did, I really like the weighted measurement of that. Janelle and I were talking about that, to almost try and correct a little bit of that if possible. And maybe we look at correcting it even more to make sure when you look at total costs for a disaster, COVID outweighs any disaster ever by far. But then you also go back to your second comment there on the political nature of how we were throwing money at things that we never would for any other disaster. So I just want to say thank you because your comment was spot on, and you're exactly right in how these assessments work out.
Yeah, this is Craig DiPolo. I've always felt whenever I do these totally inadequate because I know what I know, and then there's a whole lot of stuff that I really don't have a good understanding, history, perspective, etc. And about the only thing I could figure that would help, and we did this in I think some of the prior mitigation committee meetings, is to do it collectively, to actually get a group together and rank things together where you can have the experts talk about things and then or ask questions, and then you can make a little more informed response. Here it's probably working out in the wash overall, but because of some of the things that have just been discussed. But the only way I can figure around this to help me say when I do it is to have a more collective approach, have a bunch of people in a room and just step through the rankings and have discussion and questions during it. Just a thought.
Thank you, Dr. DiPolo. This is John Backetall real quick. I would encourage everyone on this group, the 3 workshops that we do in the regions that Randy mentioned, the last week of September, Tuesday through Thursday, will be in Elko. And there is a virtual option. So if somebody just wants to come in for the first day, that's when we do the THYRA. And you can be a part of that. There are tabletop exercises as well. So you're going to get some exercise experience. Then the following week we'll be here in Carson City, and then the week after that we'll be down in Las Vegas. And if we could get more of the SMEs participating and actually giving statistical information to help support the hazard, the discussion, and then it also details the resources that the community has towards that hazard or risk. So if we think we're pretty good in something, that we have plenty of capability and resource to deal if this particular thing would happen, then it tends to get scored down a little bit. If we think we really suck at something and we don't have that, we're never going to have that, we always have to ask FEMA for it, then it tends to get a little bit higher attention or higher ranking. So there's a lot that goes into this beyond just the threat or the hazard. It also takes into the community itself and the resources they have to meet the response and recovery of that. And then Eric, I'm sorry, I cut you off if you want to go next.
Thanks, John. Eric Ansell, Division of Forestry for the record. I just wanted to make a comment. I agree with all the comments made. One piece, when I looked at the hazards statewide in each one of these categories, and I was not surprised wildfire hit number one, but I also looked at the adjoining hazards and how they may be run concurrent with a wildfire, which would be extremely hazardous to the state. So for example, if you had a wildfire in an extreme heat index, say Las Vegas, etc., in a drought with thunder and lightning or winter storms, and they all align, that's a very hazardous situation to the state of Nevada compared to a pandemic, which could be isolated to a certain geographical location, hopefully, with a high potential to spread, but would give more opportunities for resources to engage and keep that incident isolated compared to statewide with adjoining hazards that become a mega event, if you will.
This is Kathy again. So I'm not with the wildfire thing, and I know we had a discussion about it at some point. I can't even remember which meeting it would have been, but we were also talking about air quality issues. And I know a lot of it came from the wildfires and the air quality problems, not only just from what was burning in the land, but then just how far that air quality things have spread. Do you see on some of these, when we're assessing like wildfire, like that's something that's part of it, or would that be something that's a separate category?
I will say, I don't know who that question is for, but Randy, probably here, I'll respond a little bit. In looking at the effects of climate change in particular, I think that was one of the factors that came up on several of those is decreased air quality, whether it was extreme heat, drought, or things like that as a secondary. But that's a good question. I think twice now I've been out to your place for my fall workshops and had just bad air quality. I mean, it was from a fire in California, but that could be a very interesting one to look at going forward, I think, as a primary.
This is Andrew Trelease again. I just wanted to verify that risk includes probability as well, right? I mean, like we're always going to have wildfire every year, no matter what. So hopefully we won't have earthquake or pandemic, even though an event of one of those two might be a bigger deal, but the probability is not as likely. So I think that also might weigh into why forest fires are so much higher. That's kind of a question and a statement, I guess. Yes, probability, magnitude, warning time, and duration. And in my time at FEMA Region 9, out in the West, it's my experience is, the earthquake is the big daddy rabbit, but not very often. Wildfire is happening every season, and but less so to the urban areas impact than fire. And then in between are the floods, which is a little different than in the West, right? Because I think worldwide flood remains the #1 hazard anywhere. But so yes, it is well worth the discussion groups. In the Thyra, the way we run those is we actually do survey people ahead of time, and then in our workshops, then we discuss it to go what is the collective group, the wisdom here. Like you say, that's when you can get some interesting discussions. And you're right, without a ginormous survey, you could have things skewed a little bit. And I will throw one thing out too, to John's comment. When I was at FEMA Region 9 and I did our regional Thyra, I actually threw another factor in, and that was the senior leader factor. So the regional administrator got a percentage of whatever, as she said, look, regardless of anything else that's going on in the next year or the next, whatever this time frame I'm looking at, I want to weigh this one higher. It didn't necessarily move it to the top, it weighed it higher. So you as a collective body could even throw a weight factor in like that as well, as you look at these things and go, okay, I get it that there was people out there who took some surveys, but we really believe we need to focus on this because we're meeting every month. So, good discussion. I am going to, I'll show you real quick while we were talking, I did
pull up the survey to see what it says. It's been months since I did it. So I just jumped right down. And so you can see in the survey, if you didn't take it, these are these charts that I put in with each one of these. So we see like winter weather, national risk index score, expected annual loss, wildfire. I did a risk index score, expected annual loss. So it looks like I gave people some of these charts before they answer the question to help, guide them. We see the dams, put several dam maps, and all these maps are out of the hazard mitigation plan. Dam sites, potential for downstream hazard. And so I went to see what we did with flash flood. So yes, the flash flood did say flash floods along irrigation ditches and canals, but there's no natural risk index for those. So yes, in fact, by definition in that survey, we said flash floods were along irrigation ditches and canals versus the broader flood that we have up top here.
So this is Andrew Trelease. In my opinion, that's not correct. I think that what flooding along canals and ditches is like water. You're delivering water to agricultural areas, or then they fail at some point, and a flash flooding is completely different.
Okay. I will clean up that I'll go back to the hazard mitigation plan along that and see what how we have that defined in that, and I can reach out to the subject matter expert who did the ditches and canals and see if what cleanup we have for that.
Yeah, this is Craig DiPolo. It seems like in some places like Reno, the ditches are a significant hazard because they're flooding right into the town here potentially. Just kind of a comment. Other places I can see it being more agricultural or low risk in a lot of places, but in Reno it's important.
Yes, it's very significant, and that was one I could not get the data to remap that. So that's in the plan. There's a legacy map, I think, of dead ditches, and just couldn't get a current data map to update the ditches. And you're exactly right. As you get up in around Reno, Carson City area, you've just got those ditches, canals that go extensively through the area.
Yeah, this is Andrew Trelease. I think the Fernley was an example of a failure a few years ago, and it had nothing to do with storm. It was just a canal that failed, and that sounds like technological to me. That makes sense, but that wasn't related to flash flooding. That was just a failure of a canal that was in dry times, or I believe it was in dry times. Certainly could have been.
Good. I'll clean that up, and I'll kind of report back, Joe, on how that comes out.
So Randy, this is John Backendall for the record. I love that conversation because you guys are spot on with the technological failure that we're on the breach of having. Bad word there, but the drainage system coming out of River Reservoir off of the tribal land from the Walker River. From there, they have their spillway that is failing. It's got technological problems. The canals have all ruptured along the side because of the increased water impacts to those, creating evacuations and other costs and land damage and stuff. I like what was said by Andrew there, and the fact that instead of it being called flash flood, if we can somehow reword that to be levees and canals and spillways or something to that effect, because Janelle was just explaining to me, they want to keep dam failure specific because of the high hazard dam risk grant. But there are the other hazards that we are currently living with right now under declaration. And then also will have impacts into other things as you guys have discussed. So I think rewording that somehow, even if we have to put it in a parentheses or bracket afterwards to keep it as a technological, keeping in mind that we have far worse flash flooding from the thunderstorms in Las Vegas and in some of the rural areas that you get 4 inches now instead of 4 inches in a year, and it creates those other impacts that we're used to thinking of.
Yes, definitely. Okay, yes, I'll definitely revisit this and clean it up and let you know how it comes out. All right. I don't even know what I'm sharing right now. Let me see. What are y'all looking at? Are you looking at the presentation? The slideshow? Okay. I was looking at, while you were looking at that, I was trying to find the threats and hazards guide. So I was wondering if it was there that we ended up definition, but we'll clean that up. All right. Section 4, we updated as well based on the spreadsheets that y'all provided. So thank you very much. For those who worked on those, we did get, so we had 90 responded, did the same processes in 2018. And basically for this, I totaled all the scores, racked, and we brought them all together from all the respondents to get our various scores. And again, you've got this stapley kind of thing, social tech, the scoring categories: social, technological, administrative, political, legal, economic, environmental. So combined all those, scored them, and then we used the same process since 2018. And as they ranked out, we said the top 25% were put as in the high risk, the next 25% were in the medium risk, and the bottom 50% is categorized as low risk. Pretty broad swath, but same. Again, changes from the 2018. Before the survey went out, so y'all got to comment on it, we added extreme heat and drought as categories. Although I want to say the state added, I think drought might have been in 2020, 2021 or something. I think it bubbled up for you. But versus 2018, we had extreme heat and drought that also showed up. So all those goals are racked and stacked in section 4 according to your evaluations. All right. Next steps going forward. The plan is posted and has been posted, I think, for about 3 weeks for public comment. While that's been going on, we're completing the FEMA hazard mitigation plan reviews. We have FEMA's guide for making sure we have all the things. Probably about 70% done with that. So I hope to be getting that done pretty soon. I'll be taking your comments back as well. And then we're doing a final editorial review, and we'll submit it to FEMA. So it'll go submit to FEMA for approval pending adoption. And that basically means you got to have two things. FEMA's got to approve it, the state's got to adopt it, and it's usually cleaner to send it to FEMA first before going back. So that's what that means. We will do updates per FEMA for feedback, and then finally submit the state for adoption. So having said that, and we've had great discussions here, I don't know what the cutoff, I'll have to defer to Janelle on what cutoff will be, but I will make corrections coming out of here. Again, if y'all have seen something, said, oh my goodness, we need to update this, that, or the other thing, we'll still can, update it before we hit it, send it to FEMA, because that's probably 2 to 3 weeks off, probably about 3 weeks off. I'm thinking, is that about right? Now thinking we want to submit it by about the 1st of August.
Yes, as early as possible. This is Janelle Woodward for the record. As soon as possible. What I'd like to see happen is FEMA take kind of a cursory review and say, hey, we noticed this or whatever, and then we can fix that and send it back for their final review of it. Again, I'm working mostly right now on the two appendices that have the completed mitigation actions as well as our outreach, public outreach. And so if there's anything that you guys have that you would like to send to us about something specific you did, or a couple of things, whatever, please feel free to give that to me as soon as possible. Any comments that you have, you can continue to look at it and review what's online and say, hey, I don't like this. I really think you should change this. Some of the comments I got back were just simply on like your address, that kind of thing. I will note that I took phone numbers completely out of there. there's no reason really for a phone number to be on there, so those are not listed in that list of working group members. Any comments you have about something you notice, like Salome reaching out about North Las Vegas, anything that you guys have, please reach out to me soon. We're, like I said, we're making these updates, trying to get the most updated and succinct things. FEMA has a lot of requirements this year with the new guidance that came out. So we're trying to make sure that all of that is addressed, and thanks to Randy, most of that has been addressed. I've been addressing building codes. Craig, you know, building codes has been an issue for many years in the state. We do things a little different than FEMA would like to see it. FEMA wants, for competitive brick grants, they want statewide building codes. But I feel like when I did a survey looking at where we are with building codes, we really have about 99% of our population covered under 2018 or newer codes currently. So I actually told our chief that today that I stuck a little comment in there that said Nevada believes that, instead of saying Janelle believes, I said Nevada believes that it would be useful for FEMA to maybe change their viewpoint on that and put the adoption at the local level, because you're punishing us, an entire state, essentially for an area that has not adopted any codes, but will also never apply for a competitive, you know, size grant in the BRIC program. So to make it more equitable, as they like to say, that was my comment in there about building codes. But there are definitely a lot of things that we are addressing that we haven't had to address in the past. And so I just want you guys to know that. And I will also say that we haven't heavily done the plan update as a committee, but it's because we haven't had the time to do that. In the past, we've started very early and had a lot of time to do this. And this one, we were a little bit, you know, up against the wall trying to get everything done. But going forward, after this update is finalized, we will be going to some of these things that Randy has recommended, and things going forward. So be prepared to learn a lot about mitigation. Some of these members, Andrew, Craig, they know a lot about mitigation because they've been doing it for many, many years. And I'd like to see the rest of you guys kind of learn as we go along more of the mitigation program and the things that need to be done. And you all, every single one of you, are on this group for a reason. And your opinion matters, whether you think, like Craig said, you know, sometimes looking at things and thinking, I'm not really the expert, or I don't really know this, but you have your own personal expertise that you're bringing to this group and to our state plan and our program. And we appreciate every one of you. So don't think that you don't have enough knowledge. You'll learn a lot about mitigation as we go along, but what you have already is important to us. And so that's it. Oh, time-wise. If we could get comments in maybe by the 21st, which is next Friday, we possibly could go, well, I'd like to say that the 21st, so that we can kind of, Randy and I can get things together then and be able to submit it to FEMA as soon as possible.
Thanks, Janelle. John Backett for the record. I didn't know where Janelle was going there. I thought I was gonna have to hook her back into the conversation, but she rounded it out well. Does anybody else have any comments, questions, concerns about where we're at in the current planning process? Any additional major changes that you see due to a routine rewrite of the plan? It's not a complete rewrite, more just some amendments here and there to clean it up and add the requirements that we have to have. There was some good comments made on climate change, heat, smoke. We just call it smoke season now here in Carson City. So anything like that, I think, is extremely important to make sure we're capturing that, because there is some stuff coming out on the smoke. There is a lot of stuff coming out on climate change. And obviously, we just got a weather thing from NV Energy. It's going to be 117 on Sunday in Las Vegas. So everybody have fun down there that lives there. But that kind of stuff, we need to make sure that we're getting into the plan. We have short, concise statements to it, the data to back it up, so that when we have those events, our plan deals with it so that we can move forward. Any comments?
This is Andrew Trelease. So we want, Janelle, you want the comments sent directly to you, or who should be included when we comment on email?
Please direct them to me. You guys all have my email address.
Who's
Go
me?
ahead and,
Who's me?
Janelle Woodward for the record. Sorry. It's kind of like unmuting yourself, right? So we're constantly saying sorry that we didn't introduce ourselves. Please send those to me. Now, I want to also mention to you guys that it seems to me that we're going to have to add extreme heat also and winter storm to our goals and mitigation actions, just based on what we talked about today with the ranking. Now, you guys have the ability to say, no, Janelle, I disagree with you. We shouldn't do that. But if we need to, then that's an additional, a little bit of work coming up with some projects, potential projects we can do for those items. You know, how do we deal with extreme heat? How do we deal with the extremes or the winter storm? Those need to be in there, because if we decide at a state level that we want to apply for a grant, those items need to be in that mitigation action section in section 4. So if we decide that, yes, we want to add those, either I can come up with some projects, or you guys can add, tell me, email me and say, hey, this one would be good for extreme heat, or this would be good for winter storm, that type of thing. And that's kind of like when we did our update on and adding drought to it. So that's what I would say. So we need to just confirm that we want to add those. And I'd like to hear from whoever has an opinion on that, and no opinion is too small.
Well, hi, this is Kathy Canfield again. I would want to add something with the air quality and the smoke. And it kind of goes maybe with the extreme heat also, that people have a way to escape out of it. And, that we had talked about when that was coming up, I guess this was a while ago, people having an air conditioner or something that enables them to stay in place or stay safe from that. And especially the heat and the smoke and the air quality tends to last for weeks and weeks. So it's not something you just get relief from at night or something else. You can't go out in that. So I think that would be something that should be, and whether it's related to wildfire or one of the other topics that we've got, I think it should be at least a subset of one of those.
Hi, this is Salome Barton for the record. I agree with Kathy and what Janelle has also stated, but we would like to add, it's not a common occurrence here in Southern Nevada, but we do have dust storms once in a while. We have haboobs that go through here once in a while. They're not that common, but when they do happen, they are extensive. So that can, it could be added as well as, part of the air quality issue.
Tom Backerall for the record, and Salome on top of that, just your everyday smog sucks. So when we fly in, we get to see the black layer as we crawl in through the clouds. So that's all part of that, and I agree. I think we need to add it. We just need you guys to submit some of the backup information to Janelle. She can clean it up, but it really needs to come from the experts and the panel and the local emergency managers to give Janelle the information she needs to put it together. So please submit stuff on whether it be the smoke, the dust, the smog in general, air quality, as well as the heat in Southern Nevada. It's more than Southern Nevada, but they were the only ones that didn't quantify it as a specific threat or hazard. So if we could get some information from you guys on that, I think that would be a very well-rounded hazard mitigation plan.
So Janelle Woodward for the record.
Good job.
A question I have then is, are we suggesting that we want to put air quality as a hazard? Actually,
That's
it's
part of climate.
well, but the issue, Randy, I'm thinking is it's not a hazard by itself that has been expanded on in our hazard section. So would air quality type things be able to be tied to if we added extreme heat, which is one of our hazards, and we do some or mention a project or several projects that have something to do with air quality, because that's when it's happening, or it's happening with a wildfire, or it's happening with a dust storm. Well, dust storm is not one of our hazards either. So those things would tie into one of the hazards that we already have, but we want to add extreme heat to our mitigation action section. And do we want to add, when we're adding to our mitigation action sections, that's just giving us opportunity to submit for other grants. So if we added extreme heat and we add winter storm, we can then put some projects towards under those, and then be able, those would be open opportunities in the future should something come up. I hope that makes sense.
Hi, Janelle, Salome Barton for the record. I agree. Is it possible to put it all under, whether it's heat or cold weather or windstorms, which happen occasionally, some severe weather, just putting it under one and then putting sub sections underneath that to capture them all, because just 1 year we might get extreme heat and cold weather without too many of the winds, I mean, that would cause, but I think if you put down extreme weather, to where it captures all of the above, so that way you can add them in there as subsections, if that's possible.
Woodward for the record.
What's that, Janelle?
I just was saying my name after I said okay.
Okay, all right. Okay. And if y'all go through this while we're on the subject, I pulled up. So here's an example of the analysis I added for climate change. So under extreme heat, so basically you see that in each of those where I really did a deep dive on the impact of climate change. I looked at public health, water resources, environment, recreation, hospitality, and agriculture and ranching. And so in the extreme heat section, looked at public health, and so John, here's part of it. Like, yes, we did look at mortality. So there's a section here, and they're looking at air quality due to extreme heat, the impact, looking out in the future, including, I guess, ozone particles and increased mortality rates. So please do as you look and you want to evaluate that more. Yeah, Google some little or search little air quality and see where we got there, and then we can figure out how we package that going forward. And I don't know if anybody saw what I had up a minute ago. I did find the answer on North Las Vegas. This is the earthquake study. It says some communities were not explicitly listed in the tabulations because the effects of earthquakes near those cities and towns are included in the effects of nearby communities. For example, losses in North Las Vegas are included in the scenarios for Las Vegas, Henderson, and Boulder City. So that's may not be satisfying, but that's how this study went.
Yes, Craig DiPolo, we can still run a hazardous run if you want. It'd be the Eglinton fault, and I can, if you want to include that. I do apologize to North Las Vegas. I'm not sure why we made that particular decision, but anyway. But we can run a hazardous scenario if you want to interject one of those in.
For the record, that would be greatly appreciated as we are, you know, and as a nice size, you know, jurisdiction that we do have hazards that affect our economic losses as well. Thank you.
All right, John Backendall for the record. Wanted to go through the agenda item and make sure that we have everything covered we were supposed to cover. So Randy, you were going to present the sections of the plan to the working group, get some feedback and approval, the results of the action section survey. We went through that. The members will vote on acceptance of the final version of the mitigation actions and the hazard ranking. The members will also make any recommended edits they want and vote to accept the final version of the state hazard mitigation plan with recommended edits to be forwarded to FEMA for their approval. So what we need from this group is to have a final discussion over the hazards as listed. We've made some edits that we wanted added, and Randy pointed out a couple things. Is there any further discussion on the rankings and the items listed in the hazard mitigation plan? Hearing none, do I have a motion from anyone to accept them as presented for this year's draft until we make those final edits moving forward?
Andrew Trelease, I'll make that motion.
Do we have a motion from Andrew? Do we have a second?
Craig DiPolo, I'll second.
Dr. Craig DiPolo has the second. Do we have any further discussion on the rankings of the items, the hazards? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you for going through the long presentation and meeting the agenda item and getting that stuff ranked. We can always look to enhance this plan as we move forward. It's not etched in stone. My final comment on this is that we've removed the majority, if not all, of our plans from our website for sensitivity purposes. It discloses what our risks and threats are, which could potentially be used against us, as well as the resources that we have to overcome certain things. So we've made a decision as a state and as an agency to take our plans off of our website. If you Google it, like anything else, once it's out in Google land, it's going to be out there. You're going to see some old versions of things, but all of our current copies are down and they are available to anyone at any time that would like to see them. We're just not putting them out on our website. So this plan will not go up on our website, and it will be made available to you and anyone else once we get it completed. So we'll go ahead and close agenda item number 5. Move on to agenda item number 6, public comment. Again, no action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item until the item itself can be put on the agenda, and then we have action may be taken. Public comments may be limited to 3 minutes, but again, we're not going to restrict them based upon viewpoints. We have the call-in number for those that are wanting to call in, 669-219-2599, and then they can use the meeting ID of 686-738-8625. Hit the pound. We're waiting a few seconds here for the Zoom family to get caught up with or the YouTubers to get caught up with our Zoomers. Any public comment here in the room? Seeing and hearing none. Any public comment online from any of our partners? Very good. Any write-in or call-in since we've been on?
No.
We have none. We will close agenda item number 6. We're going to an adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Andrew Trelease, motion to adjourn.
I'm liking you more and more every time, Andrew. Do we have a second?
Salome Barton, second.
Solomon's got the second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Pretty sure we don't have any opposed. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, you guys. Appreciate all your time and effort on this. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Good meeting.
Yes.